Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
All right, so nice little coda to last week's Bonanza 350th episode that we had, where we talked about the iPhones, etc. The 17 Pro Max, which I've got here, came in yesterday, so busy setting that up and playing around with it. Obviously, 14 Pro Max there. And you may be wondering if the now new production phone is in front of me and the production phone I'd been using up until last week was here, what am I using to record? Funny enough, the 5-year-old 12 Pro Max. And the funny thing is, it's to highlight the fact that perfectly old devices are very good even in this day and age. And at the end of the day, with a talking heads video like this, you're not even going to notice the difference, especially because we output to 1080p at the end of the day anyway. So yeah, the one thing I did want to just add as a coda to our discussion from last week, so feel free to check out our episode from last week where we discussed the new iPhones in more detail, is that the thing that sort of stuck with me was about the ergonomics of the 17 Pro Max, which I did highlight last time that it was lighter than the 14 Pro Max, but because of the aluminium build, the curved edges, and the physical weight distribution across the whole length of the phone, whereas the 14 was a bit more top heavy, I'm actually finding it a lot easier and more comfortable to hold for being, the brick size phone, which I actually thought was interesting because I think it's been quite a while, probably back to the iPhone 7, where I felt like I could use the phone without a case on it to increase comfort. And this one feels like you can use without a case, although I will be putting a case on it for protection purposes. But it's just interesting that it took them that long to get around to that. And I guess there's some good value in their redesign with the unibody aluminium design that they went with.
Yeah, well, it certainly sounds like they've actually once again, and I think it's probably been a couple of iterations of the iPhone, probably since the 15, where they have significantly upgraded the hardware itself and the design of the hardware. So they certainly sound like lovely pieces of equipment, and of course you've been using the Pro Max since the 6, I think. So if anyone would know, I guess it's you.
Absolutely. And just one other thing is just to point out that maybe this is where the attraction point is for something like an iPhone Air, because if it's you're trading battery life and cameras and other features, but if you're carrying around something that's very light, because the iPhone Air is about, I believe, 80 grams lighter than the Pro Max. So combine that with its thinness, there might be something about that I don't know if ergonomics is really actually spoken about as much in reviews in terms of why people would pick a phone like that.
Well, it's certainly something that I guess between Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive, like the whole design, feel, concept, was super important. So I think you might be onto something there, and it is interesting, as you pointed out to me during the week. This iPhone Air is lighter than my iPhone 13. Pretty much about the same weight, but still lighter. So considering it's larger and probably better ergonomically to pick up and hold, that's a real achievement. And you're right, it's not just the way things look, it's the way they feel. And phones are very largely tactile devices. We hold them in our hands, so they need to feel nice.
Absolutely. All right, let's have a complete change of pace. No AI today, thankfully. All science, outer space stuff today, which we haven't gotten back to for a while. I did see this story, whether it was during the week or the week before, and I also heard, I was listening to a Neil deGrasse Tyson podcast about it, about finding potential evidence of life on Mars with the Mars Rover Perseverance doing its excavations in strategically located places where they think that life could have existed. And the interesting thing is, as from what I understand, is they're not saying that they found life. They found maybe a best circumstantial evidence with the right compounds that they located that life could have produced these sets of chemicals in that environment. They can't rule out non-biological reasons for it. Still, it's interesting that, I mean, there's that kind of announcement on the one hand, but I also wonder, and I'm sure scientists wouldn't allow themselves to do this, but there is clearly, there has to be some sort of bias to wanting to find something as well.
Well, they're trying very hard to be biased against finding anything. Let's just be clear on this. Next year, in July, it will be 50 years since the first Earth craft landed on Mars. 50 years. And that original Viking lander, there was great excitement. They had 2 shots at it with their primitive machinery, and of course there's always been the argument that they found life straight up, and of course they couldn't replicate it because they only had a couple of experiments on the craft, and the data's open to interpretation. So since then we've only gone to detect signs of life. And I have to say that in 50 years, the fact that we don't know is pretty slow progress, I would have thought. I mean, at the rate...
I wasn't expecting you to come out so harsh.
Oh, well, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just, or maybe I'm blaming all of us as a species for not wanting to really find out the answer to this question quicker. 50 years anyway. So now we think that we're seeing things that might be things that living things might make, is effectively where we're at.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess it's one minor step closer, isn't it? The thing that, and obviously the problem with everything to do with space exploration is the tying to either a political objective or a economic objective. Unfortunately, it has to make sense for that to happen, which is why a lot of it is so slow.
Oh, very much so. But look, the exciting thing with this announcement is that what we're seeing is the potential for products that may have been metabolized by living creatures, let's just say. The likelihood they would have been single-cell microbial. And, of course, Earth for hundreds of millions of years was nothing but a primal soup with, single-cell organisms in it. So, obviously, if you really want to be true to scientific method, you can only say that there could be something that looks like a sign of life. If you really want to get excited about it and jump to the other extreme and say that there would have been similar conditions on Earth, these look like very similar conditions and the sorts of things that you would have seen on Mars at the same sort of time, then go for it. And it's life. But not as we know it, Ben.
Yes, exactly. One last thing I was going to say on that too is there's I guess one of the components of trying to figure out, how life started, how prevalent is it? Obviously, if they were to, get some sort of proof that life existed on Mars at that time, even if it was single cell or microbial or whatever, it leads credence to the idea that it might... life could potentially be more prevalent, because there's always the heart of the argument: how difficult is it for life to get started? If it's really hard, we might be the only life in the galaxy kind of thing, or if it's easy to get started, then there might be lots of life around, and that's even trying to answer that is beyond the grasp at the moment, which I think it might be another component to it.
Oh, look, absolutely. But I think of what we know about very early systems and the very early chemicals that would have created life and created the genetic materials. There is one argument that it's so improbable, therefore, for some reason, it must be quite natural. But I think where the big jump comes is, okay, if you can then assemble those chemicals into even just a single cell, that's just amazing. And then when you go from single cell to multicellular organisms, then you're talking up extra magnitudes of complexity. So it's amazing. It's amazing to find even the smallest trace, because if we do find even the simplest forms of life also evolved on Mars, then the next question is, are they separate to Earth, or are they somehow linked, knowing that, cosmically there's been exchanged materials between the two planets as well. So who knows what's going on, but it's just an extra piece of the puzzle. But we've still got another 999 pieces to put together in our 1,000 piece.
That's right, and the rover's going to keep digging. I'm sure it will.
It will.
And sort of tangentially related, this article from Science Alert caught my eye about aliens could potentially eavesdrop on our radio communications. I don't think that's anything too special there, but I think they were trying to highlight that talking about the Mars rover and communicating with it. Obviously, transmissions have to be sent from Earth to Mars and line up, etc. And if an alien happened to be in line of sight of that transmission, and that transmission missed Mars and just kept on going, and they happened to receive it, that could be one way that they could be eavesdropping on us. But then there was like the follow-on idea that we could do it in reverse. We could contact them that way. Yeah, I guess anything's theoretically possible. But it's big out there to try and get it'd be pretty lucky, needle in a haystack type thing, I would think.
Well, I think what they didn't really talk about in this article, and most people don't know, is that Mars has its own internet. Now, obviously, as humans, we built that internet around Mars and connected it to ours, which was very difficult because of the timing. You can't use standard Earth timings out in space, but they worked through it, and then we've got a deep space network, but effectively that's the internet, and we've got enough craft flying around Mars these days effectively to have an internet at Mars. And so what's actually happening is you've got a lot of communications around Mars, and that's why they say in that article that if you were actually to look at a Mars-Earth alignment, you'd probably see a nice little hot spot between Earth and Mars of this beam of radio waves. So it's very interesting. It's, now no longer they have to find Earth and then, try and intercept, the ABC News or something like that. Now they just have to look into a solar system, and if they just happen to be looking at Mars and it's in line with Earth, then they're going to find us.
And the interesting thing being, is this a dual planetary civilization or something? And if they're not looking closely enough,
well, they'll be looking to see if we're alive on Mars at that point.
Yeah, potentially. It was funny. I was talking to someone about this the other day about, the eventual, when the sun starts to expand, etc. There might be a period of time when Mars might end up in the habitable zone, at that point. So, because, everyone thinks, the sun will just, it'll be instant. But, we're talking, many, 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 many years where maybe Mars might be habitable by us.
5 billion years we've got. I would have thought that by that point we'll have to leave Mars as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But it does definitely point to the overall idea that obviously we have to leave the Earth at some point. Not anytime soon, obviously, but at some point we will, if we survive.
Well, in cosmic terms, really, it's just right around the corner.
Yep, and hopefully those aliens are picking up on that Mars-Earth alignment along the way. Maybe they can help us out or something. Oh, yeah,
let's hope. It doesn't always turn out that way in the movies.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, I might wrap it up there. Lots of interesting things in there. I'm always fascinated by the latest goings on in space, and a lot of interesting things I think to come in the coming decades for sure.
Well, we're certainly always increasing our presence and increasing our knowledge at the same time. So it's very exciting. It's a wonderful area of human endeavour.
Absolutely. All right, so that's it for this week's episode. We'll catch you next time.